Welcome back. Today, we are taking on an important learning concept, rote learning, and its association with memory. This topic helps us understand how information is stored, retained, and recalled, especially in academic and exam-oriented settings. Rote learning refers to the process of memorizing information without focusing on understanding its meaning. It depends heavily on repetition, where learners repeatedly go over the same material to retain it. Because of this repetitive nature, rote learning often emphasizes short-term retention rather than deep comprehension. It is particularly useful when students need to learn facts, formulas, definitions, or specific details quickly. However, while it supports fast recall, it does not naturally promote critical thinking or problem-solving skills. In many academic environments, rote learning is commonly used to build foundational knowledge. It works well for tasks that require structured responses, such as examinations, where quick recall is essential. For example, memorizing multiplication tables or chemical formulas relies largely on rote repetition. That said, this method can become less effective for long-term knowledge retention, especially if repetition is not maintained. Without frequent revision, the learnt material is easily forgotten. Another limitation is that rote learning rarely focuses on applying knowledge to real-world situations, which can result in superficial understanding rather than deep insight. Despite these limitations, rote learning plays an important role in education. It helps learners develop initial familiarity with complex terms and concepts, making it easier to approach more advanced learning later. Still, because it lacks analytical depth, it is best used alongside other learning strategies. For holistic development, rote learning needs to be complemented with methods that encourage understanding, reasoning, and application. At this point, it's important to note a concept that has been directly asked in exams: the level of processing theory of memory, which emphasizes that the more deeply new material is mentally analyzed, the better it is remembered. This theory clearly explains why rote learning, which involves shallow processing, has limitations compared to meaningful learning. Now let's move on to the association of memory with rote learning, where different types of memory play specific roles. The process begins with sensory memory, which briefly retains initial sensory input during repetition exercises. From there, information moves into short-term memory, where it is temporarily held while the learner repeats it. Working memory becomes active at this stage, processing the information during repetition and keeping it accessible. With sufficient repetition, information can be transferred into long-term memory, where it is stored more permanently. Rote learning often strengthens semantic memory, which stores facts, formulas, and definitions. At the same time, episodic memory links memorized content to specific study sessions or learning experiences, such as remembering when or where something was studied. For tasks that involve fixed steps, procedural memory helps learners remember structured routines through repeated practice. Other memory mechanisms also support rote learning. Associative memory allows learners to connect facts with cues, patterns, or mnemonics, making recall easier. Non-associative memory strengthens learning through habituation, where repeated exposure increases familiarity over time. Priming plays a role as well, since prior exposure to related information enhances recall speed and accuracy. Through continuous repetition, retention consolidates information into subconscious memory, while recall enables learners to retrieve memorized details during exams. Recognition also becomes easier with rote learning, as students can identify familiar terms or answers when they see them again. Cognitive memory helps organize repeated data into structured patterns, and self-monitoring, supported by working memory, allows learners to track their own progress and retention levels. Together, these memory systems explain how rote learning functions at different cognitive levels. Let's now move ahead and understand the concept of memory and its core components, which form the foundation of learning and behavior. Memory refers to the ability to recall past experiences that are retained in the mind. It is not a single act but a continuous process that involves learning, retention, recall, and recognition. The effectiveness or quality of a person's memory is often judged by their power of retention, and this point has been clearly asked in exams, so make sure you remember it. Another important exam-focused idea here is memory span, which refers to the number of digits or items an individual can correctly report back after a single presentation. This measure helps psychologists understand short-term memory capacity. To understand how memory works, we first look at remembering. Remembering begins with learning, which occurs when we perceive facts and form associations between ideas. Perception and repetition play a key role here, as repeated exposure strengthens memory retention. Remembering is not just about storing information. It actually refers to the modification of behavior through training and learning, a definition that has been directly tested in exams. Whenever learning changes how we act or respond, remembering has taken place. Closely connected to remembering is the concept of retention. When lessons are learned repeatedly and with proper attention, they leave lasting mental traces in the mind. Retention forms a subconscious disposition, meaning the learned material remains stored even when we are not actively thinking about it. In simple terms, retention refers to the preservation of the material learned, and this definition is another confirmed exam favorite. Without retention, learning would be temporary and ineffective. Once retention occurs, we move to recall, which proves that retention has actually taken place. Recall allows us to retrieve information stored in memory without external cues. It refers to the mental revival of learned experiences, a point that has been directly asked in exams. To make this clearer, consider the example where Anna sits at her kitchen table and thinks about what she needs to buy from the grocery store. In this situation, she is using her ability to recall information from memory, and yes, this exact type of example has appeared in exam questions, so note it carefully. Another important component of memory is recognition. Recognition involves a feeling of familiarity when we encounter something we have experienced before. It occurs when stored memories are revived and linked with prior learning experiences. Recognition does not always require active recall. Instead, it depends on identifying previously learnt material when it is presented again. According to exam-oriented definitions, recognition refers to the manifestation of general retaining power, making it an essential concept to revise. Now let's turn to forgetting and interference, which explain why memory sometimes fails. One major reason for forgetting is interference, which refers to difficulty in accessing a memory because other information gets in the way. This definition has been repeatedly asked in exams. Another cause is decay, which occurs when information is lost due to non-use over time. Simply put, if memories are not revisited, they gradually fade. And this idea of decay is also an exam-tested concept. Underlying all memory processes is the idea of a memory trace, which refers to the physical changes in the brain that occur as a result of learning. Another important exam highlighted point. Interference can further be divided into two types. Proactive interference occurs when old information blocks the recall of new information. In other words, previously learned material interferes with the retrieval of newly learned content. This definition has appeared directly in exams and is worth remembering carefully. On the other hand, retroactive interference works in the opposite direction. Here, new information blocks the recall of old information, making it difficult to retrieve previously learned material. Understanding the difference between proactive and retroactive interference is crucial as examiners frequently test these concepts in comparative form. Let's now move forward and understand the types of memory which explain how information is processed, stored, and retrieved at different stages. Each type of memory plays a unique role in learning and cognition, and many of these distinctions are frequently tested in exams, so pay close attention as we go through them one by one. We begin with sensory memory, which is the most immediate form of memory. Sensory memory retains sensory information for a very brief period after the stimulus has ended. It helps the brain process visual, auditory, or tactile inputs before deciding what information should be attended to further. In immediate memory, sensory information undergoes a process of encoding so that it can be retained in the form of special visual or auditory impressions, symbols, signs, and words. This specific explanation of how sensory information is encoded has been directly asked in exams, so it's an important point to remember. Sensory memory acts like a temporary holding buffer that allows us to make sense of the continuous stream of stimuli around us. From sensory memory, information may move into short-term memory, also known as immediate memory. Short-term memory allows us to recall specific information for a short duration. However, it has a limited capacity and can typically retain about 7 plus or minus 2 items at a time. An important exam-tested concept here is that sensory information is not preserved in its original form in short-term memory. Instead, it is encoded into a symbolic or processed format, such as auditory or visual representations. Sensory memory alone preserves information in its raw form. To understand this better, consider the example often used in exams. Reena wanted to eat an ice cream, so she looked up a phone number online and kept repeating it while dialing. Once the order was delivered, she forgot the number. This situation clearly demonstrates the functioning of short-term memory, and this example has been asked in exams, so keep it in mind. Closely related to short-term memory is working memory, which plays a more active role in cognition. Working memory temporarily holds and processes information required for complex cognitive tasks. It supports activities such as language comprehension, learning, problem solving, and reasoning. Working memory focuses on the information you are dealing with at a particular moment. In fact, the brain system that provides temporary storage and processing of information to accomplish complex tasks like understanding language or reasoning is referred to as working memory, and this definition has been directly tested in exams. Unlike short-term memory, working memory is dynamic and actively manipulates information rather than just storing it. Finally, we come to long-term memory, which has the capacity to store information for extended periods, sometimes for an entire lifetime. Long-term memory is considered to have virtually unlimited storage. It is broadly divided into explicit or declarative memory and implicit or non-declarative memory. According to exam-oriented classifications, declarative memory, procedural memory, episodic memory, and semantic memory are types or subtypes of long-term memory, a point that has been asked in exams. Another commonly tested classification includes episodic memory, semantic memory, procedural memory, priming, and classical conditioning effects as subtypes of long-term memory. These categories help explain how experiences, facts, skills, and conditioned responses are stored and retrieved over time. Let's now move deeper into long-term memory by understanding its two major divisions: explicit, also known as declarative memory, and implicit, also called non-declarative memory. These two types explain how we store information consciously as well as unconsciously, and this distinction is extremely important from an exam perspective. We begin with explicit or declarative memory, which refers to memories that are consciously formed and deliberately recalled. Explicit memory involves intentional awareness, meaning you know that you are remembering something. This includes recalling facts, definitions, or personal life events, and it does not include unconscious memories. This clear distinction has been directly asked in exams, so remember that explicit memory always involves conscious recollection. Declarative memory, in particular, allows us to verbally express what we know, such as specific facts or past experiences, which again is a confirmed exam-focused definition. Within declarative memory, the first important subtype is episodic memory. Episodic memory stores memories of specific episodes or events from an individual's life. For example, remembering your first day at school or a special celebration comes under episodic memory. In technical terms, episodic memory is the long-term memory for information tied to a particular time and place, especially personal life events, a definition that has been asked in exams. Closely linked to episodic memory is incidental memory, which involves recalling details about when and where life events occurred. This association between time, place, and experience has also been highlighted in exam questions. The second major subtype of declarative memory is semantic memory. Semantic memory stores general knowledge and facts that we acquire over time, independent of personal experience. Knowing the capital of a country or understanding scientific concepts are examples of semantic memory. According to exam-tested definitions, semantic memory refers to memory for general knowledge about the world and the rules of logic used to deduce other facts. It also includes a student's overall understanding of concepts and factual information. In simple terms, semantic memory represents a student's general knowledge about the world, a statement that has been repeatedly asked in exams. To make this concrete, consider the example where Ram, during an English class, recalls the author of The Diary of a Young Girl. This act of recalling factual information clearly demonstrates semantic memory, and this example itself has appeared in exam questions. Now let's shift our focus to the second major category, implicit or non-declarative memory. Unlike explicit memory, implicit memory operates without conscious awareness. It involves knowledge that we are not actively trying to recall, yet it influences our behavior, thoughts, and performance. This definition that implicit memory affects behavior without conscious recollection has been directly asked in exams. Implicit memory does not deal with intentional remembering. Instead, it supports habits, skills, and learned responses such as knowing how to ride a bicycle without thinking about each step. This distinction between conscious and unconscious memory is crucial for conceptual clarity. Several types of memory fall under implicit memory, including procedural memory, priming, and classical conditioning effects, all of which have been highlighted in exams. Procedural memory refers to the memory of motor skills and cognitive operations. It allows us to perform tasks smoothly, such as typing on a keyboard or riding a bike, without consciously recalling each movement. Procedural memory is defined as knowledge of skills that are not consciously retrieved, and this definition has been asked in exams, so keep it clearly noted. Another important form of implicit memory is associative memory, which involves learning by association. Classical conditioning effects fall under this category. For instance, salivating at the smell of food due to prior conditioning is an example of associative memory. In learning theory, classical conditioning is considered a form of implicit memory, and this connection has been explicitly tested in exams. Next comes priming, a subtle yet powerful memory process. Priming occurs when exposure to one stimulus influences the response to another related stimulus. For example, recognizing a word faster after seeing a related word earlier demonstrates priming. In exam terms, priming is defined as a phenomenon where prior exposure to a word or concept makes it easier to recall related information even without conscious awareness. This precise definition has been asked in exams, making priming a high-yield concept. Finally, we look at non-associative memory, which refers to changes in behavior that occur due to repeated exposure to a stimulus. Habituation and sensitization are classic examples. Unlike associative learning, this type does not involve forming links between different stimuli. Instead, behavior changes simply because of repetition over time. To conclude, explicit memory deals with conscious knowledge of facts and experiences, while implicit memory operates silently in the background, shaping skills, habits, and conditioned responses. Understanding this distinction is essential not only for mastering memory theories, but also for scoring confidently in exams.